And therefore, we put forward readiness for certain decisions to be taken by the heads of state. So we are working on the task that has been given. The Presidential Task Force is going to do its work, and we're going to report to them on the decisions they must take to make sure that that date becomes a reality. So we will give them what they need to take the decisions politically to establish the union or the bank and the currency by the date that they had proposed. That's where we are. So that's a decision for this summit, and then maybe there will be a pronouncement after that. But that's a decision for them to take.
For clarity, are we expecting that this summit, again, today is the last day of the media summit, is today's session expected to bring word, outcome on the as you've said earlier, it takes political will to get us to get to the 2027 deadline to launch. Is there expectation that this summit would end with that announcement?
There will not be any announcement different from the date that has been set up, because there are tasks to be completed, and the Presidential Task Force has tasks to be done. Those tasks will guide that decision. So the 2027 date is the date that we are working towards. There's no new date that's going to be pronounced. There are decisions to be taken to make sure that that date comes to fruition, and that will continue. So 2027 is the date. No new date will be pronounced. Decisions will be taken on the operations of the task force, and that will allow for the next summit for concrete pronouncements to be made.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We'll continue the conversation much later. What we're just doing is just, short interviews and recaps and highlights and just brief conversations with them for now, and much later on, obviously, in our subsequent editions on the Wake Up Sierra Leone program, AYV on Sunday, this day, other conversations on AYV, we would be able to expand on these conversations as well. We're going to have some interview opportunities, one-on-one interview opportunities with some of the dignitaries here, and we would expand on these conversations as we continue. This is Wake Up, this is AYV here. We're so used to our Wake Up Sierra Leone and AYV on Sunday. This is AYV television and radio. Please stay tuned throughout the day as we'll be bringing you live coverage of activities here live from Lungi.
Thanks indeed. I've also been joined on set this afternoon, this morning, by the Attorney General, the country's Attorney General, and would like to know, basically, Mr. Attorney General, we've seen the former president and his Mike Koroma, arrive this morning. What does this mean?
Well, it means that he's free to be back in country. He's always been free to be back in country. But you'll recall that when he was arraigned before a magistrate over 2 years ago on allegations of being involved in charges relating to treason or misprision of treason or harboring, he was granted bail because he sought leave of the court to attend to his health, to get medical treatment abroad. So he was always free to come back. But the big decision, as we all know in the country, is that a few days ago I filed papers by law, to discontinue charges against him. And so as a result of that decision, if you look at Section 45 of the Criminal Procedure Act, it means if a suspect or an accused person is on bail, then immediately all bail conditions are rescinded and he's free to return to his normal life. So I think that is what the former president has honored, and he's back in country. But he's not just back in country by way of a return. He's back in country because His Excellency the President, noting the decision that was taken by my office to discontinue charges, and of course the resolution that was tabled and adopted by members of Parliament, His Excellency also chose to invite him as a policy government position, to invite him as a guest to attend the ECOWAS summit that we are here for at Lungi. So that is why he's back in country.
Let's also discuss security in the sub-region. Let's say law and order in the sub-region. You head the committees that are, what's your position basically in ECOWAS at the moment? Because President serves as chair.
Well, noting that the president is the chair of the authority of heads of state and government of the ECOWAS region, by extension, I, as his Attorney General and Minister of Justice, I serve as the chair of justice ministers across the region. And of course, when we talk about justice, our approach to it, under His Excellency's leadership and me being chair, is that justice needs justice systems, even though they are different, they are connected in the region. They are tied to security. They are tied to how people carry on their daily lives. They are tied to how economic activities operate in the sub-region. And so if we just focus on building justice systems in one country and ignore the others, there will be spillover effects, if things don't work in other countries. And so that is why the approach has been joint security, joint investment in justice reform. And so we can all live together as a community. We have been taking steps to strengthen the mandate of the African Court to ensure that states are able to comply with human rights obligations and with decisions handed down by the ECOWAS Court. We have also talked about a people-centered justice system, noting that we need to design justice systems that will respond to the unique needs of individuals, because we know that if those systems only respond to the needs of individuals in Sierra Leone and not individuals in Guinea or Liberia, when they move across the border, it affects us. And so we want a people-centered approach to justice delivery that will cover the entire West African sub-region. And so that is how we have handled the mandate of the chairmanship.
With respect to decisions taken by ECOWAS court, why is that the case?
Well, implementation or compliance with decisions are never easy. I always like to say that the cases that go to court are legal processes, but implementing decisions of regional human rights bodies are political processes. They are legal, but they are political processes. And of course, we accept that they are about human lives. They are about systems that will strengthen our governance architecture. But take note of that we sometimes focus on those decisions that have not been implemented. But there are several other decisions that have been implemented, whether it's in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, in Liberia. Yes, there are records of decisions that have been implemented, but we acknowledge that we need to do better, we need to do more, we need to strengthen the human rights architecture in the sub-region, and compliance with these decisions is one part of it.
Lastly, does it mean, or is that a possibility that the case against former President Ernest Bai Koroma will reopen in the future? Is it possible?
No, we haven't said so. I think we've been very clear. Section 45 is very clear. We have laid it out for people to read. I think where we are is that we have discontinued the proceedings against him, and we want to keep it at that, and say that the former president will be treated as a former president. He'll be treated as a statesman in this country. That is the commitment that President Bill has made, and that is the commitment that he will honor.
Thank you so very much indeed. Obviously, he's the country's Attorney General and the Minister of Justice speaking to us this afternoon. My colleague Fabian Swill will continue the interviews.
Yes, it's such a beautiful time here in Lunge, and it is the ambience itself, the band, the police band has been really good since yesterday. It's been giving us good performances from time to time. They're really, really good. But now we're going to have another interview. And with me now I have Dr. Leonard Umar Bangura. He is Doctor of Philosophy and a lecturer at the Political Science Department at Froabe College. Father Leonard, as mostly or popularly called by many. Dr. Bangura, thank you very much for joining us here this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
You have vast knowledge we'll tap into this morning. Let's talk about ECOWAS itself. The power of ECOWAS over its member states. How influential do you think ECOWAS is?
Actually, ECOWAS is actually influential because it is a regional body that is responsible for economic integration, political and social mobility in the sub-region itself. Despite the weaknesses that we are witnessing recently with the secession of 3 of the member states, that is Mali, Burkina Faso and Nigeria, Guinea as a question mark. But then the problem is that despite the problem that we have weaknesses, we call it a federation, sort of federation in which we are in power, so to speak. But yet it's influential, especially in the region of regional for economics. Like also when there is any problem with the sub-region, the first port of call is ECOWAS.
But that's not what we've seen in recent times. Take, for example, in Sierra Leone's context, when we had that issue, please step forward a bit, when we had that issue with the local governance from the 2023 elections, it led us to a point of calling on how much difference would you say Sierra Leone gives to ECOWAS?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier on, ECOWAS doesn't have a binding force, so to speak. The only force that we have is the ECOMOG, the military wing of ECOWAS itself that can intervene in military situations. But when it comes to political situations, they are a bit tricky, because even though ECOWAS has created what you can call the peer review mechanisms to follow democracies in local governments, but there are loopholes. For example, the reporting of what really operates in the member states is not usually correct to allow ECOWAS to have the power to actually influence. So this is a problem. One of the weaknesses of ECOWAS is this. It follows from what we saw from the OAU and the AU. The OAU initially it had also these weaknesses, and then it was transformed to African Union that was able to address situations. But in my own opinion, despite the weaknesses, we cannot, when we talk about political institutions, we always have problems with them. However, there is a relevance of ECOWAS because it helps to mitigate conflicts, it helps in economic integration and political issues, also social mobility. So that is why, despite the weaknesses that we are experiencing, ECOWAS is still relevant for the sub-region.
What do you foresee as the future of ECOWAS? That we have 4 of its member states who are no longer members of ECOWAS, and you intimated earlier about even Guinea with the chances of 50-50. It's 1 foot in, possibly 1 foot out. What do you think is the future of ECOWAS?
The future of ECOWAS, according to my estimation, is that these are cracks, we call them. But there is a possibility of them returning if only ECOWAS is able to address the political and the situations that force the 3 Sahel states to withdraw from the organization. So if ECOWAS comes together, for example, they have to tackle the political problems, the security problems of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. If ECOWAS actually comes on board, despite the tricky situations there, I think they can still come back. Guinea is an example. For example, Guinea is here already in this ECOWAS summit today. It's a point that they cannot be it alone. Even like the Sahel states, for example, Burkina Faso and Niger, they are landlocked countries for which they need others if they are to exist. So that is why they are only trying to assert their influence, that their issues have not been addressed by ECOWAS. That is why they are pulling out. But if ECOWAS is able to address their issues, politically, security, economic reasons, they will come back. This is my own belief.
Now, let's talk about conflict within countries in ECOWAS. Sierra Leone, as a country, does have an issue with Guinea over Yenga and some other border crossing points, but prominently Yenga. This is something that has spanned for over 2 decades. Yet, both countries are ECOWAS member states. ECOWAS itself, as a bloc, as a body, has not been able to resolve this issue between Sierra Leone and Guinea, yet they are member states.
Yeah, but this is a reality that prevails not only between Sierra Leone and Guinea. We have Rakasamans, Senegal, and then we have Bakassi Peninsula with Nigeria. So these are things that are happening that have border conflict issues, which I think...
Do you think ECOWAS has the power to intervene and resolve these matters, or do you think it's above ECOWAS?
Well, power is relative, but it has the authority to bring the member states together and say, now let us look at this, let us go back to the drawing board. We had the colonial... I don't want to call them masters, but they created the dispute. Let us address these issues. ECOWAS has capacity, I believe, but it remains the political will for them to come together and bring the member states that are in conflict to say, come, let us resolve this issue together. The political will is what ECOWAS needs, and the courage to tell the facts. So, for example, Guinea, that you have already transgressed, you have encroached into Sierra Leone land. The moral authority ECOWAS has, but the courage, that is what is lacking, in my opinion. They have to come out and say, this is the issue. Let us resolve the issue that country A, you have actually encroached into country B's issue. And if we don't do this, ECOWAS will continue to see a break and cracks in its own organization.
And finally, before I let you go for now, I want you to analyze Sierra Leone's hosting of OAU back then to now hosting ECOWAS Summit this 2026. Compare and contrast both, and let's weigh advantages and disadvantages from a political scientist perspective.
Yeah, from a political point of view, Hosting, let me start from the positive. It's actually a landmark for us because our own president, Julius Maada Bio, is actually the president, the chairman for this authority of heads of state and government. So for us coming to Sierra Leone, it puts Sierra Leone on the map. But then looking at, well, some people have been saying, OAU by then in 1980, it depleted the resources of Sierra Leone. But now I don't think it's the same case, because what has happened actually is that Sierra Leone has not taken money, so to speak, from our reserve. Rather, what it has done, it has borrowed. So it shall be paid in time. So it's my opinion that it's not going to actually affect as it did in 1980. This is a different scenario. But then looking at it more positively, in fact, for us to have this particular summit here in Lunge and this particular edifice, the conference center here, is going to also throw more opportunities to this region here in Lunge. For example, now we have the opportunity of hosting international conferences here in Lunge, and then if only governments could do some other sacrifice, maybe move 1 or 2 ministries over to here, and then also create the bridge, we can have emptying out of Freetown, and then people will be having opportunity to come over here to Lunge. So there will be enormous opportunities for employment, for job, and every other avenue can be created. So that is why I see more positive swines than negative than how people are seeing the whole thing. My only concern is what shall be the future of this edifice after this conference. This is why, for me, government will now come together and say, okay, now, what are we to plan about this edifice here after this conference? How can we make it much more marketable? Let us create the bridge. For example,
you mean the Lunge Bridge?
Lunge Bridge, so that people can have access, and ministries, like, for example, the Ministry of Transport and Aviation can have its own base here, so that we can have an opportunity. So that if more people are here, I think this place after this summit can still have a viability. So for me, I am positive about the whole move itself.
Thank you very much, Father Leonard, for joining us this morning for this short conversation. We are still here at the Julius Maada Bio International Conference Center, and today is the 19th, and it's the final day of the mid-year summit. Today we have our heads of states who would be converging here, and the heads of states would be converging here today, and this would mark the end of the deliberation. So the primary purpose of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government Summit is to serve as the highest decision-making body for assessing regional progress, resolving political and security crises, and advancing economic integration. Now, there is quite a lot going on in Africa and within member states of ECOWAS, and today is when the heads of states would sit on these deliberations. By the end of today, conflict, the dispute between Sierra Leone and Guinea, for example, for Yenga and other crossing points. Other countries as well do have these issues. So at the end of today's summit, we would get to know what the heads of state sat to discuss and what the resolutions are. There's still that low-hanging fruit, the ECHO, which for about 2 decades we've been procrastinating as a body. Postponements, reaching deadlines, postponing. Last year, for the 68th session, the task force, the President Task Force, was sort of revived to see this to fruition to 2027 for the launch of the single currency within ECOWAS, which is the ECHO. We still have 4 countries who left ECOWAS. And Guinea, there's still talks about Guinea being 1 foot in and 1 foot out. But again, by the end of today's sessions, we would get to know what the deliberations would be with the heads of states and what the outcomes would be for the 69th ordinary session of the ECOWAS heads of states and government.
Indeed, many thanks indeed, Phoebian. If you've been following the civil society space as well, you would know Abdul Fatoma. He is one of the most critical voices, in the civil society space. He has joined us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Abdul.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Quite well. It's a pleasure having you. What are your impressions generally of this program?
The investment is a good one, and what we want as a country, We want a judicious use of it. So since the government has prioritized all the challenging area for this infrastructure, so this infrastructure will be able to raise funds to support those challenging areas. But then if we cannot utilize it properly, maintain it, to sustain it, then it will become another catastrophic project. But what we as a country want, is to emulate this. Doing a record project like this within 4 months, 2 weeks, and then also the record number of people who were employed, during the construction of this project, 1,200, and a capacity of 1,400 and a multi-purpose. It's good for the country and for those who are in show issues to host their event and raise revenue, and it's also good for businesses within the Lunge community and for the country as well. But we just want a judicious use of it. We don't want it to end up like the UU building. We don't want it to end up like the National Stadium. We want it to end up being, a productive thing for this generation and the other generation.
Let's discuss justice across the sub-region. Oftentimes, countries hardly adhere, or implement rulings from the ECOWAS courts. Why do you feel that is the case?
That's just hypocritical of the community. When it's a justice issue, it's not a binding issue, but other protocol issues are binding, and so it's quite challenging. And ECOWAS always feel uncomfortable when civil society across the ECOWAS community talks about these issues. And so it's a concern to us as a right-based organization, and we continue to push ECOWAS to respect their own decisions, their own ruling, and so the community will become more stronger.
Now, beyond the flags, the pomp, the pageantry, and everything that is happening here, what do you think this particular summit will do for Sierra Leone?
It's a significant moment for this country because over, 40 years as a country we have now hosted an international conference in this nature. And even though this one is more smaller than the previous one we hosted, but it brings a spotlight to this country, a spotlight in a positive direction. We have been battling with negative image for far too long and of recent, but this one, it will help to bring the attention that the people of this country required and the respect that it requires. But we continue to ensure that the government of this country continue to be transparent into the transactions of this infrastructure, and we will continue to ensure that the government of Sierra Leone subject itself to accountability.
Finally, let's discuss organization and everything that is happening here. Do you think everything has gone or proceeded very well, or do you think things could have been done better?
Things could have been done better. There are a lot of challenges. A lot of things needs to be done. I hope they will use this as a good opportunity to learn how to plan and organize future conference. But with this one, there are a lot of challenges from logistics, transportations, sitting accommodations, and several other. But a country that has no organization.
It should be reflective of the felt need of the people. That was why when we were in governance also, we created lasting infrastructure in areas that were not our stronghold. So as a born and bred of Lunge, I want to express our profound thanks and appreciation to the government of Sierra Leone for this structure here.
What are your party supporters and members saying, being that, again, this infrastructure sits now here at Lunge, home to you people, and you are the MP for this?
Of course, the opposition is concerned also for value for money. This structure cost over $124 million.
What do you mean concern for value for money?
Value for money, whether it's worth the amount. Recently we just came from Abuja, where the the president of Sierra Leone, who is the chairman for heads of authority and heads of state, where he launched the massive structure built by the Chinese for the ECOWAS headquarters. And you saw 3 structures. You saw the conference center at the middle. It all cost $56 million. You understand? So you come to ask yourself, but like you say, as opposition, we are not opponents of the development of this country. We are proponents, And when once it's good, we say good things about it. And where we have questions, we ask those questions. So we appreciate the fact that a structure like this is built here. You understand? But again, we have to question the amount that is used to build the structure.
When you say ask questions and now you're questioning the value for money, how would you be channeling these questions beyond just engaging the media?
That is why we are in Parliament. That's why we are in Parliament. So we're going to do due diligence. But like I said, the summit is very good for Sierra Leone. The mere fact that Sierra Leone is taking a center stage, we now have the chairman for the heads of states all around the sub-region. To us, it's a blessing as a country. And for this conference to be hosted in Sierra Leone is also a blessing, And like we say, we are not a destructive opposition. That is why we are all here, to make sure that we complement the efforts of government and we express our total willingness to work hand in glove in ensuring that the aspirations of government they are achieved.
What impact do you envisage this summit, hosting the ECOWAS Media Summit, would have on Sierra Leone as a country?
Well, firstly, we have the leadership of the community. And if we have the leadership of the community, Sierra Leone should be at the center stage of decision making in the sub-region. And you cannot be at the center stage when you don't take bigger responsibility. So this is a very big responsibility, and as a nation, we have accepted it, we've taken it, and we, the opposition, are working hand in glove with government to ensure that we present a very good picture and image, during these stages. But to have a critical decision-making position in ECOWAS as a nation is a blessing to us.
Over 40 years ago, it was under the APC administration that the OAU was hosted. Here we are. The SLPP then criticized the hosting of that summit and how it was done, and history says it contributed to crippling Sierra Leone's economy. Here we are now hosting this. In your assessment, comparing and contrasting hosting OAU then and 40 years later hosting the ECOWAS Media Summit, what would you say are the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and cons of both?
Well, I don't like direct comparison, because we should not be seen too political in everything we do. If it doesn't mean that because SLPP criticized the OAU summit that we hosted, that brought the entire Africa to Sierra Leone. This is just West Africa. That summit brought the entire Africa to Sierra Leone. Even when you are opposing, you should give the good effect of it. That brought visibility. That puts Sierra Leone in the center stage. You have some countries you go to, when you say you are from Sierra Leone, they will ask you, where is Sierra Leone? They don't even know about the existence of Sierra Leone. So once you host the OAU summit, you succeeded in bringing visibility to your country. And this is the same thing now we're doing. This summit, we know we have financial challenges as a country, because this structure, most MDAs are responsible to fund this structure. As I speak, the NACIT, NRA, a lot of local revenue has gone into this structure already. But like I say, it is with the intention of bringing visibility to us as a nation.
Let's talk about the discontinuance of former President Ernest Bai Koruma's treason case. Is the APC worried that this is a temporary discontinuance, or do you think this is the end of it? When we had an interview last week with Josise from Ministry of Information, he said President Bio is true to his word. The discontinuance is not temporary, it's permanent. But do you have reservations, concerns or fears as a political party?
I don't, because this is part of the effort made by Parliament in ensuring we put into place parliamentary diplomacy. We've been between the two leaders. We have come a long way. We went to Abuja, we engaged the two leaders, and both of them are extremely sincere in this very resolution. And to me, I am fully convinced that this is the end of the matter.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable, for your time with us this morning. We would obviously continue to have this conversation at the end of the summit with the resolutions that may have emerged from the session here today. But lastly, before I let you go, how powerful do you think ECOWAS is as a body over its member states? How respected is ECOWAS?
Well, I have had issues with some of the decisions with ECOWAS. I have even used it at the ECOWAS Parliament. Because don't forget, I'm a member of the Sierra Leone's delegation in the ECOWAS Parliament. We've seen on several occasions when the ECOWAS court has taken a decision and member states will not implement the decision of the ECOWAS court. And we've seen in the member states where critical decisions of governance, abuse of constitution, abuse of democratic rights in other African countries, in other ECOWAS member states, including, for example, in Guinea-Bissau, the president had to cancel parliament because he does not have the majority in parliament. In other African countries, in Sierra Leone, you see, so some of these decisions that affect democracy directly are not sorted out by ECOWAS.
Why do you think that's the case? Or in essence, do you think they have the authority to sort these out? Or is it that they have the authority but they're not doing it?
They should have the authority because every member state is subjected to the community, subjected to decisions of ECOWAS. So I think the ECOWAS should focus in as where the community is focusing on integration. We should also focus on good governance, ensuring that president and opposition have very good relationship, and ensuring that the constitution of each country is respected, and ensuring that elections are transparent, free and fair, and all of those things.
How best do you think authority on member states and have more like a positive influence in a very perhaps proactive way to address issues before they escalate into something that requires something that requires much urgent or stronger intervention to resolve?
That is why more emphasis should be laid on early warnings. The political stability just degenerates in the twinkle of an eye. There are early warnings, and ECOWAS should take note of these early warnings, make sure that they use mediation to solve the early warnings. It's very important. We should not relax and wait until things degenerate before ECOWAS steps in. In some of those countries in which they had coup d'etats, I'm sure if there had been early warning steps, it would have prevented the coup d'etats in those countries. So ECOWAS should be and ensuring that they monitor the political situation in all of its member states, and ensuring positive actions are taken to forestall potential instability in ECOWAS member states.
Let's talk about your impression on the commissioning yesterday of the ECOWAS logistics depot. It sits in Sierra Leone. We're home to Sierra Leone, especially in our peace and security, because they also mentioned yesterday that it has now gone beyond just logistics. It's also expanded to a humanitarian angle as well.
When you go to Abuja, you see the ECOWAS headquarters. You know that for every summit they host in Abuja, for every interaction, meetings of the economy of the state, and it also helps to ensure that they create more employment for their people. and it makes Nigeria the center of critical decision-making process in the community. So the same implies to Sierra Leone. We should have a strategic role to play in the community, and hosting the depot here is a great deal for us because it prevents, possible problems from happening in Sierra Leone because they would situate here, they would locate here.
President Bio is seeking a second term as ECOWAS chair. Does the APC endorse and support his candidature?
The APC is a party that likes Sierra Leone. The APC is a party that supports Sierra Leone. On several occasions, the APC has supported, when we were in governance, we supported the minority leader, who was SLPP, for a critical national position, international position. We supported her wholeheartedly. So the APC wants Sierra Leone to progress. So we would support anything that will push the image of our country to the height we all expect it. Because this is Sierra Leone. We would not be against ourselves.
A message to President Bio.
President Bio, firstly, you have a great deal. The mere fact that you are coordinating all Africa, the region, the sub-region. We have seen you gone to other countries where there are instabilities, and we've seen the role that you've played as the chairman. So, renowned democracy, there is governance, there is opposition. So space should be given to the opposition to operate, and I like the new trajectory when we had the 11 years rebelling caution. So now we can solve our coexistence between the governing party and the opposition.
And lastly, your message to supporters of the All People's Congress, members and supporters.
To my comrades of the All People's Congress, like you have all seen, we are fully determined to take governance in 2028, and we should be seen as responsible opposition. Is what we'll work on. Remember, a lot of infrastructures were built by APC when we were in governance, but when SLPP took over, they didn't destroy them, they worked on them. So also us, whatsoever we're doing, that is why we are particularly concerned to protect the image of this nation, because it does not belong to one political party. APC may own this country, and the image of this country has to be protected. Let us ensure that we do our best so that we win the next elections through the ballot, and we take governance through the ballot. But we cannot wait until we take governance before we develop this nation. We can help the current government to develop this nation. There is a Creole adage that says, that goat way you get for tot, not wait till you go dirty before you total. Help clean the goat so that when you carry the goat, you know that you contributed in making the goat clean.
Thank you very much, Honorable Abdul Kargbo, for your time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
He is the leader of opposition in Parliament, Honorable Abdul Kargbo, and as a member of Parliament, he is there representing Port Loko as well. So he is a very strategic person to talk to about the infrastructural development here in Lunge, the Julius Maada Bio International Conference Center, and also it's home now to the ECOWAS Logistics Depot.
Indeed, Phoebe. A lot of guests are arriving actually, strategically placed here. I'm left thinking actually, what do you think the bloc would be discussing today? There are several issues actually, from existential threats, for example, coups around Africa, countries not honoring rulings from the ECOWAS courts, which seem to be the case now. The Attorney General spoke about it a while ago. Also, even the issue of the FGM, female genital mutilation,
Yes, the FGM, let's start with that. It's a very controversial situation as we speak currently, because the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam Amina, is calling on ECOWAS to criminalize FGM, and she's saying hands off our girls' genitals. On the other hand, our First Lady Fatima Maada Bio, who has hands off our girls, is still caught up in a controversial web. This pro-FGM and anti-FGM debate, which has not died down, by the way, it's still a conversation. There's still back and forths with that. So So she's caught up in that web. And the anti-FGM activists, many of them, Nene Ugiatu and the likes, have been saying that the First Lady is pro-FGM. She is supporting FGM, even though she has hands off our girls. And then you have the Deputy Secretary General, Madam Amina, on one hand, calling on ECOWAS to criminalize FGM against girls, saying hands off our girls' genitals. So there's hands off our girls, then there's hands off our girls' genitals. It's quite a controversial situation here, and even though the First Lady and her sister Dr. Sylvia Olainka-Blyden and her team have tried to explain repeatedly her stance and her position, the anti-FGM campaigners still maintain their stance that the First Lady has not explicitly, as she has done for child marriage, menstruation and all the things she has championed, she has not explicitly addressed the issue of FGM against women and girls. They say that her dancing with the Sowes during that Bondo and Sunday celebration, and what she said that she is one of them, she's a circumcised woman, and they have her full backing. They say is an endorsement to them to say carry on. The First Lady argues that she is a traditional woman, she loves her culture. Just because she said she is one of them doesn't mean she's saying they should circumcise women who are not willing to be circumcised and girls underage. And again, the anti-FGM side, they still stress she has not, as she is known to be very bold and sometimes undiplomatic, she has not explicitly spoken to address that issue sufficiently to give clarity. And then now we have the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations calling on the ECOWAS leaders to criminalize FGM. Looking forward to what the deliberations will be on that, if at all they would have deliberations. Because there are times when leaders, these ECOWAS leaders are the leaders of their countries. Yeah. We've seen instances where leaders ignore completely issues that are raised by their citizens, or people who raise issues, whether they're citizens or not, on issues about Africa. Let's see if they would deliberate on this and what would become the outcome of it.
Indeed, we are hoping indeed that that particular issue will be discussed today. As you've said, it's a very thorny issue actually in Africa, because for us here in Sierra Leone, it's still happening, and there is this web of irony, that surrounds the whole issue, and loopholes, bureaucracy and everything that surrounds that particular issue. We'll keep our eyes glued on that and hope that perhaps the leaders would actually discuss this. But I'm more particular about what this newly inaugurated depot and this particular international conference center would have on the existence of ECOWAS generally, and how would it replace Sierra Leone strategically, in the sub-region for trade now, for example, because a lot of businesses are still crying. While ECOWAS was commissioned or established to facilitate smooth trade, liquid trade across Africa, a lot of businesses are crying, especially SMEs, that getting their board the most. It's really a situation.
It really is, and especially at the border crossing points, there is this issue of Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa, the French-speaking African countries and the English-speaking African countries. And sometimes when you talk to the